Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel, Savage Reads. I have had quite the week. Last week, my computer had some technical difficulties, and of course, I hadn't been keeping my to-be-read list in a good format. I literally had it written on one of the stickies in the sticky application on the desktop of my laptop, and my whole laptop had to be wiped. My TBR disappeared, and I am pretty sad about it. Luckily, I had quite a few books already on hold, and the only thing I have lost is who originally recommended those books. And I was lucky that I could go back through some of my recent YouTube comments on some amazing videos of people's yearly wrap-ups and reconstruct a lot of my to-be-read list from that. So it's been a bit of a week, but I feel like my list is somewhat up and running again. If you have a book that you really want me to read, please let me know in the comments down below, because there's a chance that it got lost along with everything else. But I am saving my book list in a much more backed up sort of way at this point, and I'm back in on normal reading. So this last week I read some really interesting books, and this week I am starting another buddy read with Tiffany at Towering TBR, which is going to be so much fun. But before we get into the books, let me give you a quick knitting update. So I am just about done with these first sleeve on the sweater for my husband. Now this sweater feels giant, but I've got the top, missing sleeve, almost done sleeve, and this whole thing. I am hoping that blocking will fix a whole variety of ills in this sweater, mostly because my gauge swatch was a little wonky because I did my gauge swatch in the color work pattern, which I'd never done before, and it did mess with my gauge. And so I'm really hoping that it all comes together okay, but I do almost have this entire sweater done, and so we will see what happens when I get the next sleeve on. But I am so close to finished with this project, and I am having a fun time picking up some new skills. There are just definitely some things that, could I go back in time, I would do a little bit differently. But we'll see once I get it all blocked and finished. Maybe it's going to be perfect. But let's jump into some of the books that I have read the last week. So very recently I read the book Beauty by Robin McKinley. I found out that after writing Beauty, 20 years later, she wrote another retelling of Beauty and the Beast, which is Rose Daughter. So I thought, I need to go see the update. It's not often that you get an author tackling the exact same story 20 years apart, and I thought this would be really interesting to see. And you know what? Getting into this book, I thought, wow, this is amazing, because you can really see the development of Robin McKinley's writing. It's much more descriptive. We really feel like we know all the characters. You go into more depth. There's some world building. There's magic systems in place. It really is cool. And so I was like, wow, okay, I am so excited to talk about this on my channel. Everybody should read Rose Daughter after reading Beauty to just see the difference, because I thought Beauty was really great, and it's so fun to see the improvement in Robin McKinley's writing. But then I got toward the end of Rose Daughter and thought, actually, I didn't really like this, because while it was so descriptive and it went into so much more, pulled out all these different world building ideas, the payoff wasn't there. It got kind of boring and over-explanatory toward the end. And the very end, you look at it and say, logistically, I'm very confused about why or how anything is happening right now. And so I was really let down by Rose Daughter. It was an okay book, but I think Beauty is such a lovely, perfect telling of the story of Beauty and the Beast. It feels like such a classic tale, and Rose Daughter really feels like it's just building on that, expanding the world building, getting us to really know these characters better, and then it just trips up and falls flat on its face. I don't get the ending. I didn't really get what Robin McKinley was trying to do, and I just thought it was overly descriptive and a little boring by the end. I think the ending didn't have that sense of urgency or excitement. It just kind of felt overdone. This was an interesting book. The only reason that I do recommend this, even though I didn't love the book, was I think it's really cool to read both. I think it's really interesting to see the development of the writing and to see what worked and what didn't in each version of Beauty and the Beast. And so I do recommend this, but as a pair with Beauty. Now, speaking of books that deserve a good pairing with them, we have Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. Now, this book did mention in the author note at the end the exact book that I thought of throughout my entire time with it, and that is the book of Ashley Sack. And that book is a nonfiction book going through this cloth sack that had been embroidered and passed down through families and how it connected generations of a family. And this book has a similar idea. It is a fiction book about this jar that has been passed down through this family, and it's this multi-generational family story to connect the families throughout the ages. This jar is a character in the book. The blurb says, when 10-year-old Abby Freeman heard the gunshot, time stopped, and when she saw her brother Baz lying on the floor surrounded by the shattered pieces of a centuries-old jar, life as Abby knew it shattered as well. And so we get a bit of that crime mystery, but that's not really the driving force. What the driving force is the history of this jar, the stories that were told, going back in time and seeing the significance in their family members' lives. And I thought that this was just a 5-star excellent read. I think you should read this book with the book about Ashley Sack. So that is All That She Carried, The Journey of Ashley Sack, A Black Family Keepsake by Tia Miles. And I think reading both of these is really a great idea because you get the beautiful writing in the Charmaine Wilkerson book, you get that family saga, but you also get, if you read All That She Carried, you get a lot of the history behind items such as this sack or as this imagined jar and the significance they can have for families across generations. I thought this book was excellent and I highly recommend both of them together. Now, I read out loud to my daughters the book Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. This is a magical middle grade adventure story where Min Lee wants to change her family's fortune and goes on a quest to find the man of the moon to ask her questions on how she can change their family fortune. And on the way, she meets a very interesting cast of characters. She befriends a dragon, and it's a heartwarming, sweet fable kind of story. It has a very strong moral and message that is not super up to interpretation. It's very, here is the moral and message. We have put it on a nice plate and we are serving it to you. But you know what? I don't mind that in this type of book because it is supposed to be a bit more of a fable with a strong moral, and the writing was really engaging and fun. My girls enjoyed it, and I think honestly the best thing that came out of this book is that now my 5-year-old, whenever she asks a question and the answer I've got is, oh, I don't know, she responds with, well, I guess that's another question we will have to ask the old man of the moon, which is adorable and is my favorite thing that came out of this book. So overall, I enjoyed it. It was a great middle grade read. So I just finished The House on the Strand by Daphne du Maurier. I have read a few of her books. I think her most recognizable is probably Rebecca, but I think my favorite that I have read of her books was My Cousin Rachel. But this is The House on the Strand, and I, of course, did no research going into this book, just jumped in and then was so confused about the premise. The premise is that we have a man who is staying at his friend's house for the summer, and the man's family is going to come and meet up with him soon, and they're going to enjoy their vacation together. But his friend is a scientist and has encouraged him to try this weird drug that he has created, and the drug throws the man back in time mentally. Physically, he's still in his own time, but it throws him back in time, and we follow this past storyline at the same time. And so you get the time travel sci-fi element, which is not really what I was expecting from a Daphne du Maurier book, but she does a really good job at the suspense and horror of everything. And I think where I really felt it was in the story of our main character, Dick Young, who keeps taking this untested drug to throw him back in time so he can live his double life. And I think the suspense that I felt, at least, was just in how much I disliked him as a person, his complete disregard for his own well-being, the well-being of his family, the feelings of his wife. It's like, do you even like her? She seems perfectly fine. There's nothing going on with that wife that you think, oh yeah, I can see why he would want some more distance from her. She seems like a perfectly lovely person, and he is just kind of the worst. And so I think the suspense was, is his reckless behavior going to have any real consequences? Or is he going to skate past all of these things that could really harm or injure himself and others? And that is where the suspense was for me. Now, the story of the past, that he goes back into the past, yeah, there's some murder mystery, there is that story, and I wanted that to be compelling, but for me it just wasn't. I could not have cared less about what was going on in the timeline from the past. I just didn't care, and so that really did take down the book. I mean, I think if it was just the kind of character study of Dick Young, I might have given it a 4 out of 5 stars and oh, I really liked it. And now this is like a 2 or a 3 because I didn't find the storyline of the past to be very engaging. Instead, I think the only thing that I found super engaging was just how much I disliked the main character. But it was an interesting one. It is interesting when you look at the other books that Daphne du Maurier has written. This does fit in with her other work. You can see some of the stylistic similarities, but to have that really sci-fi element, it was a really interesting look into her writing. I think this did show an interesting portrayal of addiction, and so you might find something there. So I don't know if I necessarily recommend this as where to go for Daphne du Maurier, but if you are very interested in her work, yeah, pick this one up. It's a bit of a strange one. I just wish that the storyline of the past was more engaging to me because I just never really cared. And that is what I have read the last week or so. If you have any thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.